two leagues dominating the College World Series Final Eight. Football, we now have the SEC and the Big Ten as the two dominant programs, the dominant conferences financially, and with a lot of really good teams. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Is this a preview of what is to come in football, where it's basically two leagues just completely dominating a more expansive playoff? And is that a concern? Pat Forde.
I think it is a potential preview, and it's absolutely a concern. I mean, we do know they're going to have the most money. They have won all the championships other than Clemson in the last however many years, and it's many years, going back to, I guess, Florida State in 2013. And the way that there were certainly some at least some theories broached about how the playoffs should be constructed in terms of automatic bids and who should get them. And lo and behold, the Big Ten and SEC wanted most of the automatic bids, even though they should probably get them anyway. And I think the more these two leagues work together and work possibly against everyone else, the better the chances that they continue to distance themselves from everybody, and we get a playoff bracket that doesn't look too dissimilar to what this College World Series bracket looks like, except you swap out Virginia and North Carolina and Florida State, and you put in Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State, or Ohio State and Michigan and Oregon, or something like that. Because that's the other thing, obviously, is these two leagues are adding absolute powerhouses, Texas and Oklahoma for the SEC, and then the Pacific Northwest plus the Los Angeles schools for the Big Ten. So it further increases their chances of having all the best teams and getting all the bids, and getting a lot of like rematch kind of games in the opening rounds and in quarterfinals.
Yeah, the rematches will come, and they will come quite a bit. I know we talked about this, 'cause I wrote about it a few months ago, how, they should try to avoid first round rematches. As of now, they plan on not doing that. They're not putting in an official rule or policy to avoid first round rematches. And there will be at least one. I just crunched the numbers. I think it was around 7 of the last 10 years in the CFP. There was one. There was a first round rematch. So almost 0.8 times you'll get a first round rematch. And imagine how many rematches we'll have in the quarters and semis and so on. We're going to have a lot of rematches every year, maybe at least a couple a year. So that's the most kind of concerning thing for me. It does devalue the regular season a little bit, but I think the overall point about two leagues dominating a postseason is spot on. I mean, I think we're going to have SEC and Big Ten get around, if you crunch the numbers or so, it's around 70%. Those two teams will combine for 70 to 75% probably of participants in the playoff. You go back the last 10 years of the CFP, the numbers bear it out. I mean, they really do. It's around, like I said, I think it's around 65, 70%, something like that when you look at the numbers. So yeah, we're getting a little preview here of what it's like. A lot of rematches in two leagues, basically playing for the championship.
What about this, though? Obviously, we could have this, two teams could easily be in the top. The quarterfinals next year could be all Big Ten. Actually, it won't be. They've done two things to make sure that can't be the case.
Right.
Obviously, the top 4 seeds are conference champions. So yes. The ACC and the Big 12 are almost certainly, unless a Mountain West or somebody else jumps in as that fifth, it gets in the top 4, which is possible. Big 12 could absolutely beat itself up, and a 12-0 or 11-1 Boise or Fresno State or something like that, or Memphis, AAC, whatever, could jump in and get that 4th spot, which would be kind of wild. But those 4 spots are going to be, so at least 2 teams will make the quarters. We've seeded in two teams that probably, and in some years this will be a big dispute, as you can imagine. Imagine if Boise State is the 4 seed and getting a bye, and most people look at them as, the 10th, 11th, 12th best team at best. But that could happen because if you get a Big 12, we know the Big 12 is going to be crazy, right? Easily could have 2-3 loss Big 12 champion that might be better. So you have that cuts it a little bit. I think one of the issues that makes this somewhat jarring, and believe me, I am somewhat slightly jarring. I'm not jarred. There's no jar here. No jar. Is all of these teams are in the southeast part of the country. Again, we just discussed why that might be, but they do have sunshine in California and Texas and the right. I guess we got Texas A&M, but when your geographic range runs from College Station to Charlottesville, I guess that'd be the distance. So if it's a Big 10 SEC alone, again, runs to at least Austin to the west. The Big 10 is really the Big 10 Pac-12. It's 2 conferences. So if the Big 10 representatives in the thing are USC or Oregon or Washington or whatever, maybe it's less of they're Big 10 in name, but geographically at least, you're not sitting on the West Coast going, I got nobody. Or you're not sitting in the North going, College World Series, I got no one to root for here. This is a Southeast dominant league, and we discussed why that might be. But does that help? That I think Oregon is the team you're looking at coming in and going, oh, it's a Big 10 team. It is, but it's in Eugene, Oregon.
The Western flank.
The Western flank.
Dan.
The Western flank.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess that helps. Again, it's completely ridiculous to have them in the same conference, but it does. It doesn't mean you can't have some geographical diversity come playoff time if those teams from the West, perform well enough to get in there at least, and then you've got somebody playing on Pacific time, and you may have a home game in California or Oregon or whatever, or Seattle. But yeah, this won't be quite as parochial as the College World Series is going to be from that standpoint. But it's still we are trending in a way that I think invites people in some parts of the country to pay less attention. I would imagine ratings for the College World Series are not going to be that good in a lot of the country. And if you end up with a even more parochial football playoff eventually at some point, I would imagine you're going to see people in certain areas just say, I don't need to watch it. It
is kind of weird, like given how big the Big 10, really the Big 12, and I guess throw in the ACC too. The Big 12, Big 10, and ACC now all have kind of West Coast, Western members, and it puts it probably puts people on the West Coast in a awkward position as far as like what you root for. Like if you're a USC fan, do you root in general for West Coast teams? Obviously you're going to root for USC, but outside of that, do you root for West Coast teams?
Do you root for Cal more than you would root for Purdue?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's it's an interesting situation. I mean, I'm just thinking of like me personally, like my family, right? They root for teams in their geographic footprint. In the Southeast, like that's just that's what they do. That's what they were kind of brought up to do. But I can imagine if all these, I don't know, if your conference is split across the country, do you feel the need to root for your conference more than your region? Because now no longer are conferences in a region.
The SEC's kept it. I'll give them credit as best they can.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I agree. I mean, let's say you're a Michigan State fan, and It might be too personal to be Michigan State. I don't think they could. I don't think a lot of Michigan State fans are rooting for Michigan or Ohio State when they're in the thing. But let's say you're a Minnesota fan. Okay, so you're the Minnesota fan.
There you go. Yeah.
Do you root for Michigan and Ohio State when they were in the playoff because of the regionality? Some people in the North even will root for Notre Dame, although there's generally not. But like some regionality, you just don't want that. If you're a Minnesota fan, do you really care about Oregon? Like, to me, Oregon, USC, these schools have come in. I would hate those schools. I would hate that this happened. Your chances of success in sports are your chances of success are less because your league just added people with more resources. I still don't know why they even voted to expand these people, but they did. And now you're like, am I excited? Because maybe you could sit there and be like, hey, I'm happy Iowa's doing well, or I'm happy, let's go Spartans, go, hey, Purdue's in the championship game. I want Purdue to win the national basketball championship. It'd be good for the Big Ten. We haven't won a basketball championship since Tom Izzo in, what was it, 2000, 2001, whatever.
2000.
Yeah. Do you really have any allegiance to these new schools?
None. Absolutely none. Nobody should be able to make you. Again, this is like cheering for money. It's antithetical to all of a sudden say, "Oh yeah, Big Ten pride. Look at Oregon. They got good distance running and they may be good in football. That's awesome." They don't care. It's completely. It's not been baked into you to care. And all of a sudden now you're supposed to. That's why I will be interested to see, because nobody roots harder for conference glory than SEC fans. They somehow, kind of, even though they all fight like crazy, but they all brag when their teams win championships, even if it's not their school. But now with Texas and Oklahoma, what are they going to do there? Are they going to co-opt them for real, or is it just kind of be like, oh, here's these new people that we really don't have any history with who now are winning championships? Like, is South Carolina going to be excited if Oklahoma wins a softball championship? I would guess not, but we'll see.
Yeah, your connection to your conference members is not what it used to be, and it's a weird dynamic moving forward of where the fandom and the connection now lies with your region or with your new league. It's a weird time in college athletics. Yeah.
Well, this will be provincial. I mean, this is going to be, if you're a college sports fan in the Southeast, you got somebody to root for. This is College World Series set up beautifully for you. And these are clearly the best teams. Like, we just went through those seedings, 1 through 4 all made it. Like, it's going to be heavyweight on heavyweight, which is pretty cool for the baseball.